She argued with a stranger in line, not knowing he was her new boss. It was an ordinary Friday, but Livia Nogueira had already decided it would be the last one she'd let work consume her completely. The workday had ended 2 hours ago, yet she was still at her desk, staring at the screen, reviewing an ad campaign the creative director had dropped on her at the last minute. One of those tasks no one wanted, and that somehow always landed in her lap. The office's cold light washed over her tired face. Her eyelids were heavy. In recent months, the company had become a polished battlefield, exhaustion dressed up as opportunity. Everything was about targets, commitment, and wearing the jersey. But no one talked about the loneliness of giving your all and still going home with the hollow feeling of having achieved nothing. She closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and stood up. Grabbing her coat from the back of the chair, she glanced at the clock. 10:17 p.m. The city was winding down, and the glass wall on the 15th floor mirrored her worn-out reflection, hair hastily tied up, lipstick faded, eyes too full for someone who hadn't cried. She considered heading straight home, but the thought of facing the silence of her small apartment made her change course. Riding the elevator down alone, she felt that kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. She stepped into the night. The air was warm, thick with the scent of a rain that never came. The city lights shimmered, bouncing off cars rushing past. She walked to a quiet bar on a side street she knew well, a tucked-away spot for those needing a moment to breathe before diving back into real life. It was her little refuge. The space greeted her with low music, clinking glasses, scattered laughter, a narrow wooden bar, tables crammed too close, and a kind-eyed bartender who already knew her by name. She took her usual corner seat, slipped off her coat and ordered a glass of wine. As she waited, her body finally began to loosen. She watched the room, couples pretending to connect, friends pretending to have fun, lonely people pretending to be busy. Funny how even in a crowd you could feel completely alone. The bar was getting crowded. A noisy group filed in, taking over much of the room. Among them, one man stood out. Not for being loud, he wasn't, but for something quieter. A presence that seemed to claim space without trying. His dark suit clashed with the laid-back vibe, and the way he scanned the room in silence suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Livia noticed him, then quickly looked away. She wasn't interested in anyone. After a while, she went to get another glass of wine. The bartender was busy, so she headed to the bar. There was a short line, but the tight space made everything slower. That's when someone, tall, distracted, seemingly in a rush, stepped ahead of her, maybe without noticing, or maybe pretending not to. "Excuse me," she said, voice neutral. No reply. He was too absorbed in his phone, which only fanned her irritation. She lightly touched his arm. "Sorry, but I think the line's behind me." He looked up. For a moment, their eyes locked. His were a golden brown, the kind that shift in different lights. But what struck her most wasn't the color. It was the way he looked at her. Not annoyed, not defensive, just deliberately calm. "You seem distracted," he said, voice low but steady. "I thought the line had stopped moving." "It did, because some of us still believe in order." "Interesting," he replied, not breaking eye contact. "Others believe in not making a scene out of something simple." The tension between them turned the air electric. A few people glanced over, curious. Livia took a breath, trying to hold back a sharper response. She failed. What's simple is saying sorry, but maybe that's too much to expect from someone who thinks the world revolves around him. His eyebrow lifted, amused by her boldness. Not many people talk to him like that. "Maybe it does," he said, half smiling, "and you just haven't realized it yet." That was all it took. She stepped in closer. Maybe the world's just tired of men who believe that. A thick silence fell. He watched her a beat longer than necessary, like he was trying to decode a language he'd never heard before. Then, without a word, he signaled to the bartender and ordered 2 whiskeys, his and hers. He paid, left the change, and walked out without looking back. Livia stood there, confused, irritated, and to her dismay, slightly intrigued. The bartender set the drinks down. "Looks like the gentleman covered yours, ma'am." "I didn't ask for charity." He said it was an apology from a man who sometimes speaks before he thinks. She sighed, took a sip, and shook her head. Men like that never speak before they think. They speak because they know they can. She finished her wine, left a bill on the bar, and walked out. That conversation would stay with her longer than she expected. The next morning, her alarm rang at 6:30. Livia got ready quickly and left the apartment, the night before still echoing in some stubborn corner of her mind. The office was buzzing. Rumors had been swirling for weeks about a major leadership change. The former president had passed away, and word was his son, who'd been living abroad, would take over. No one really knew his name. No one had seen his face. Then the all-staff email came, calling everyone to a company-wide meeting at 9. The murmur around the office was instant. Livia filed into the conference room with her co-workers, adjusting her badge. The lights were a touch too bright. A sleek stage had been set up at the front, the company's logo against a deep navy backdrop. An aide asked for silence, and the head of communications stepped up to speak. "Today marks a new chapter for all of us. After years away, the new CEO is officially stepping into the presidency of Vasconcelos Holdings. He brings fresh vision, new values, and a bold outlook for the future. Please welcome Mr. Dante Vasconcelos." The name echoed through the room, but it wasn't until the man stepped onto the stage that time truly stopped. Livia's stomach clenched before her mind could catch up. It was him, the same man from the bar line, the quiet provocation, now in a tailored suit, poised, commanding the microphone like he'd been born to lead. The audience applauded. Livia couldn't move her hands. He, on the other hand, looked completely at ease. His gaze swept the crowd until it landed on hers, and held. Not in surprise, but in something far more dangerous, recognition and faint amusement. The memory of their clash was alive in both of them, and the faint smile he gave before launching into his speech was the first sign. This story was far from over. The following weeks were an exercise in self-restraint for Livia. Every meeting, every team briefing, every presentation felt like a test she hadn't signed up for. Dante never addressed her directly, but the way he watched her, quietly, deliberately, felt like a constant challenge, like he was waiting to see just how long she could keep her composure. She pretended not to notice, but she felt the weight of his presence in every move she made, and the more she tried to ignore him, the more he seemed to orbit her, always at the perfect distance between tension and temptation. One afternoon during a brainstorming session, fate decided to push her patience a little further. Livia was presenting an innovative concept for a digital campaign when Dante walked in without warning. The room fell instantly silent. He walked to the front table and leaned casually against it, eyes scanning the notes scribbled on the board. "Interesting," he said after a pause, "but a little too bold for a company still finding its footing." Livia didn't blink. Boldness is what separates those who reinvent from those who just survive. He lifted his gaze to hers. "And what happens when boldness crosses the line into recklessness? Then maybe it's a sign that the line was already outdated." The air thickened. A few colleagues held their breath. Others looked away. Dante's expression remained unreadable, but there was something in the corner of his mouth, a restrained hint of a smile. "Carry on, Miss Nogueira. I'm curious to see just how far your boldness can go." So she carried on, and he stood there, listening, analyzing, as if each word she spoke was a personal dare. After the meeting, as people began to file out, he stopped her. "One moment, please." She turned, tense. He waited until the room emptied, then crossed his arms. "You speak like someone who has nothing left to lose. Maybe because I've already lost enough not to be afraid anymore. And still, you keep challenging your boss? Only when the boss behaves like a roadblock." He stepped a little closer, just enough for her to catch that warm, woodsy scent he always carried. "I could take that as insubordination, or honesty. Depends on what kind of man you are." For a second, the silence between them stretched, expanding the space without needing sound. Dante held her gaze, then gave a half smile, the same one from before. "We'll see, Miss Nogueira. We'll see." She walked away without replying, heart racing, face composed. She already knew he was going to be trouble. What she didn't know yet was just how much. And it was right then, in that charged, silent moment, that fate quietly rearranged itself. Because love, when it wears the mask of conflict, is just the truth trying to be born. The office hadn't changed. Same desks, same white walls, same glowing screens. But since Dante Vasconcelos took over, something in the air felt different, like the natural rhythm of the place had been quietly rewritten. People spoke more softly when he walked by. Smiles were tighter. Even footsteps seemed to quiet themselves. Livia watched it all from a distance, pretending not to notice, pretending nothing had shifted. But it had. There was something about knowing he could appear at any moment. Calm, precise, with that gaze that seemed to see beneath the surface, that kept her perpetually on edge. It wasn't fear. It wasn't respect either. It was something harder to name. Something that stirred where words didn't reach. Dante, on the other hand, moved through the office with a kind of polite sharpness that bordered on provocation. Never rude, never inappropriate. But every gesture, every word, carried a subtle edge, like they were locked in a private dialogue no one else could hear. On the Monday after their tense exchange, Livia arrived earlier than usual. The corridors were still half empty, filled with the hush of a building not yet fully awake. She used the quiet to get ahead. Reports, campaigns, schedules. At 10, there'd be another marketing committee meeting, and she knew Dante would be there. At 9:45, he entered the room. The AC was far too cold, and yet her body flushed instantly. He greeted the room with a simple nod and took his seat at the head of the table. No arrogance, just an irritating kind of ease, like power had always belonged to him. "Let's begin," he said, flipping through a notepad. "Convince me this campaign deserves the investment you're asking for." Livia inhaled slowly. She knew that wasn't meant for the group. It was meant for her. And, as always, she didn't hesitate. The investment justifies itself through results, not promises. But to get those results, we need to take smart risks. Dante looked up, meeting her eyes. Risk is a word that makes investors nervous. And comfort is the word that kills every great idea. A brief silence followed. The other directors exchanged glances, caught somewhere between admiration and fear, but Dante didn't flinch. He leaned in slightly, resting his elbows on the table. "So tell me, Miss Nogueira, should I approve something that might fail? I think you should approve something that has a chance to succeed. Failure is part of the process. Playing it safe isn't." He held her gaze too long. It wasn't a professional challenge anymore. It was something else, something unspoken, woven into the spaces between words. When the meeting ended, he waited for the room to clear. "Stay a moment, please." She looked at him, hesitant. Her heart raced, but her face gave nothing away. He stood, walked to the whiteboard, and slowly erased the notes she'd written during her pitch. The movement was quiet, almost thoughtful. "You know what I realized?" he said, still facing the board. "That you hated my ideas. That you like to fight, even when there's no war." She crossed her arms. "Maybe the problem is that you don't realize when you're losing one. You think you can beat me. I think I can be right. And sometimes that's enough." He turned to face her. There was no anger in his eyes, just curiosity, the kind that studies something too complex to name. "You're not like the others who work here. If that's a compliment, thank you. If it's a complaint, get used to it. It's neither, just an observation." "Well, I've got one too. Let's hear it." "You're the kind of man who thinks everything can be fixed with a look and the right tone of voice." He smiled faintly. "And are you saying I'm wrong? Sometimes charm isn't enough." He stepped closer, less than a meter away. She could smell the earthy wood of his cologne, Feel the steadiness of his breath. Watch the way his eyes lingered on hers, intentional, careful. It was all perfectly calculated, but somehow she didn't step back. "You're right, Livia," he said, using her name for the first time. "Sometimes it takes more than charm." She swallowed hard, silent. He smiled again, barely, and returned to his seat. "The meeting's over, you can go." As she walked out, her heartbeat was uneven, her thoughts unruly. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something dangerously close to desire. And that irritated her more than any of his provocations ever could. In the days that followed, their encounters became inevitable, and the more fate insisted on placing them in each other's path, the more layered it all became. Dante was demanding, precise, at times relentless, but now and then something slipped through, a lingering glance, a slight hesitation in his voice, an unexpected kindness, small gestures that said more than they should have. Livia, for her part, clung tightly to professionalism. Still, she found herself watching him more than she meant to. It wasn't just that he was attractive, there was something deeper, a kind of gravity, a loneliness that pulled at her in contrast to his strength. She saw in Dante something she recognized in herself, someone who bore the weight of always having to look unshakable. One afternoon, the marketing department was informed that the new campaign would be presented in person to a group of investors. Dante chose only 2 people to travel with him, the CFO and Livia. The announcement sparked murmurs and sideways glances. To some, it reeked of favoritism. To others, it looked like a setup. To her, it was just another test. The plane landed in Belo Horizonte late in the afternoon. The event would be held at a luxury hotel, and Dante, as always, seemed untouched by any discomfort. At the welcome dinner, he remained his usual self, reserved, observant, speaking only when necessary, his gaze constantly taking in the room. Livia, seated beside him, tried to stay focused on work, but occasionally she could feel his eyes on her, subtle, brief, but undeniable. Not invasive, but enough to make her feel exposed. After the dinner, as the group began to disperse, Dante turned to her. "Tomorrow I want you to present the creative part of the project. I thought you'd prefer to handle that yourself. I'd rather have the person who believed in it deliver it." She nodded, caught off guard. It was the first time he had ever expressed anything resembling trust. "Good night, Mr. Vasconcelos." "Good night, Livia, and—" He paused, offering a half-smile. "Try not to pick a fight in the breakfast line." She almost laughed but held it back. The memory of the bar lingered between them like a quiet ghost, and somehow, that offhand comment made it clear he remembered everything. The next morning, the event began right on time. Livia delivered the presentation with clarity and conviction, while Dante watched from across the room, focused, almost proud. When she finished, the applause came naturally. She returned to her seat, heart still racing, and he simply nodded in acknowledgement. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His look said it all. She'd done it. Later that evening, in the quiet lobby of the hotel, Dante approached her again. "Great job on the presentation." "Thank you. I don't usually admit this, but I was wrong about the boldness. Sometimes it's exactly what's missing. Sometimes it's what we have too much of. And when it's too much, it means someone has to take the first risk." He smiled. "Then congratulations on being that someone." They stood in silence for a few beats. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses filled the background, soft and intimate. There was something suspended in the air, something no longer strictly professional. But neither of them seemed ready to break that fragile balance. "Good night, Livia. Good night, Mr. Vasconcelos." She made her way upstairs. He stayed behind, watching the city lights reflect on the glass. He knew he was standing at the edge of a line he shouldn't cross. But sometimes danger is the only place where desire can finally breathe. In the days that followed, back at the office, something in him shifted. There were no more pointed remarks, no subtle provocations. Instead, Dante treated her with a quiet kind of respect, a deliberate deference that left her more unsettled than any of his challenges ever had, and paradoxically, that made it harder to breathe. Livia could feel eyes on her now, whispers in passing, sideways glances, silent speculation. No one said anything outright, but it was enough to make the atmosphere feel charged, almost hostile. She pretended not to care. But at night, when she got home, the silence came with a growing restlessness. She wasn't sure what she feared more, losing her job, or something far less tangible, losing control over whatever this was that was building inside her. Late one night, her phone rang. It was an internal number from the office. She picked up, surprised. "Hope I'm not calling too late," came the familiar, deep voice on the other end. "Mr. Vasconcelos? Dante, please, we're off the clock now." There was a brief pause. "I need the latest version of the campaign report. I'd like to review it before tomorrow's meeting. I can email it to you. I'd rather pick it up in person. I'm near the office." She hesitated, but agreed. 20 minutes later, he arrived. The building was nearly empty. Livia waited for him in the lobby, envelope in hand. When he approached, the tension between them turned almost physical. "Here it is," she said, holding it out. "Thank you," he replied, taking the envelope, but not leaving. The silence stretched. He looked like he wanted to say something, but held back. She, in turn, fought the impulse to break the moment. "Livia," he said at last, voice low, "do you know what intrigues me most about you? I imagine you're going to tell me. It's that, even when you're afraid, you don't back down." "I'm not afraid of you." "No, not of me, of what you feel when I'm near." The words hit like a velvet blade. She met his gaze but didn't answer. He held her eyes for a few seconds longer, then stepped back. "Good night, Livia." She watched him walk away, disappearing down the corridor, and she stayed there motionless, trying to pinpoint the moment their connection had stopped being a clash of wills. Maybe it never was. That night, lying in bed, she realized something new. The anger she felt toward him was no longer pure. It had the bittersweet taste of something that, left unchecked, could easily turn into longing. And that's how pride begins to crack, quietly, without warning. Because love, before it is recognized, often hides in the clothes of confrontation. The days following Dante's phone call were strange. On the surface, nothing had changed. He remained poised, measured, impossibly controlled. And yet, something was different. Something unseen but undeniably felt, as if every glance held the weight of memory, of things said and things still unspeakable. Livia tried to shut it out. She threw herself into work with near-obsessive focus, arriving early, leaving late, triple-checking campaigns, rewriting reports no one had asked her to fix. It was her way of staying grounded. Or maybe, just keeping her hands busy while her heart wandered where it shouldn't. But the thing about someone like Dante Vasconcelos, he noticed everything. It didn't take long for him to pick up on the distance, the clipped replies, the eyes that now avoided his instead of challenging them, and rather than pulling away, he seemed intrigued, like someone watching a wild creature, captivated by the balance between fear and fire. On a Tuesday morning during a planning meeting, Dante arrived a few minutes late. The team was already deep in strategy talk, and Livia was presenting a new proposal. When he walked in, the murmurs died down. Everyone instinctively straightened in their seats, but she kept talking, unfazed. "What if we explore the contrast between time and consumption?" she said, turning to the board. "The idea's simple, to show that what truly matters is what endures, not what gets replaced every season." Dante took his seat, watching her in silence. There was something almost hypnotic about the way she moved, confident, unforced. Her confidence didn't stem from a need to impress, but from belief in what she was saying, and that disarmed him more than he cared to admit. When she finished, a quiet pause filled the room before he finally spoke. "Interesting," he said, "but risky. Not everyone's ready to face time head-on. Which is why most spend their lives running from it, she replied, without skipping a beat. Maybe it's time to remind them that real value is found in what endures. A subtle stir rippled around the table. Some exchanged glances, surprised by her boldness, but Dante didn't seem the least bit bothered. If anything, there was a flicker in his eyes, something between admiration and challenge. You're suggesting we position ourselves as the exception? I'm saying we already are. We just need the courage to admit it. He paused, then tilted his head ever so slightly. Keep going with that line of thought, Miss Nogueira. I want to see where time takes us. The words, spoken with deliberate ambiguity, lingered in the air between them, and no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, the echo of his voice replayed in her mind like a song too slow to forget. In the days that followed, Dante began calling her into more frequent one-on-one meetings, informal check-ins in his office, always under the guise of reviewing reports or polishing presentations. But somehow the agenda always drifted into conversations that had nothing to do with work. "Have you always been this way?" he asked one afternoon, as they pored over spreadsheets. "This way how?" "Direct, unpredictable, a little impatient." "I suppose so. Must have been hard on the people around you." She glanced sideways at him. "Are you trying to be charming or just provocative?" "Just observing." "And what exactly are you observing?" "That it's rare to find someone who says what they think without calculating what they might lose." She fell silent for a moment. "And you? Do you calculate your words?" "Always." "Doesn't that exhaust you?" "Power demands precision. Mistakes cost more from certain positions." Livia lowered her eyes, thoughtful. "Maybe that's why you always seem so distant. And maybe that's why you always seem at war." The conversation ended there, but the words didn't. In the days that followed, she found herself thinking about them, about how he saw her, and what that said about who she was becoming. And without realizing it, she began to watch Dante too. Like someone studying the nature of a force they can't decide if they should resist or surrender to. Winter deepened, bringing with it long nights and even longer hours at the office. One Friday night, it was already past 9 when Livia looked up and realized the floor was empty. Everyone had gone. She was still there, finessing a time-sensitive campaign. The glow of the monitor lit up the glass panels, and the soft click of the keyboard was the only sound in the room. She was so focused she didn't notice when he walked in. "Still here?" Dante asked, stepping toward her desk. She jumped slightly. "I could ask you the same. I have the luxury of a key, and I have the flaw of not knowing when to stop." He gave a faint smile. "Mind if I sit?" "Sure, but I can't promise I'm good company." He pulled up a chair and sat beside her. For a few quiet moments he just watched, her half-finished texts, the blinking cursor, the handwritten notes scribbled at the margins. "You rewrite too much," he said. "I revise." Rewriting is not the same as revising. Maybe. But sometimes we call it revision when it's really just fear of getting it wrong. He looked at her more closely now. "Are you afraid of making mistakes?" "I'm afraid of making the same ones. There's a difference." The silence that followed was oddly comfortable. Dante studied her face, lit softly by the screen's glow, and something in his chest tightened. A forgotten sensation, like catching a glimpse of the person he used to be before becoming who he is. "What is it?" she asked, noticing his stare. "Nothing. Just thinking how some people show up in our lives when we least expect them." "And what do you do with that?" "Depends. Sometimes I ignore it. Other times, I watch until I understand why." She looked away. "Have you figured out my why yet?" "Not quite, but I'm getting close." Livia stood. "I should go. It's late." "I'll walk you." "There's no need. I live nearby." "Even so." His tone wasn't commanding, just steady, and she, too tired to argue, quietly agreed. In the car, the silence was thick but not uncomfortable. Rain began to fall in fine threads, tracing little rivers across the windshield. He drove with calm focus, eyes on the road, while she watched the city dissolve into soft reflections. "Can I ask you something?" she said, finally breaking the quiet. "You can. Why did you come back? To the country? To the company? Maybe because some things, we don't really choose to leave, we just postpone the inevitable." "And what's inevitable for you exactly?" "Returning. There's always a moment when the past demands to be present." She fell silent. There was more behind that answer. She could feel it, but she didn't press. When they arrived, he parked in front of her building. Livia unbuckled her seatbelt and murmured a thank you. He looked at her for a moment before speaking again. "I shouldn't care." "Care about what?" "You." She froze for a second. His gaze was steady but raw, stripped of pretense. Not knowing what to say, she replied simply, "Good night, Mr. Vasconcelos." He offered a faint smile, one edged with melancholy. "Good night, Livia." She stepped out, walked into the building, and as the door closed behind her, she leaned against the wall and drew a shaky breath. She felt suspended between what was right and what was real. And in that moment, the two no longer fit in the same space. In the days that followed, things between them grew quieter, but not less intense. There was an invisible tension clinging to every conversation, every glance. Dante seemed to be wrestling with something, perhaps himself. And Livia, despite all her efforts to maintain distance, felt herself being pulled toward the very thing she had always tried to avoid: power, risk, the unpredictable. One afternoon, after an external meeting, they were caught in a long traffic jam on the way back to the office. The car crawled along a flooded avenue, rain pounding hard against the windows. Exhausted, Livia stared out, eyes lost in the grey cityscape. Dante drove in silence, seemingly deep in thought. "You know what bothers me most about you?" she said suddenly. "I imagine you're about to tell me that you never lose control. And that's irritating because it makes it seem like nothing ever touches you." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I've just learned not to show it. Is that a choice or a defense?" "A bit of both." "So we're alike. In what way?" "In hiding what we feel. The difference is, you hide fire. I hide the cold." She turned to him, studying his face. "And which one burns more? The one that lasts longer?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was dense, charged with meanings neither dared to unravel. When they finally arrived at the office, it was already night. The halls were deserted, rain still echoing against the windows. Livia went to her office to grab a few documents, and Dante followed without a word. She pretended not to notice, but she felt him there, his presence trailing just behind her. "Why did you come up with me?" she asked without turning around. "Because I wanted to." "That's not an answer." "Then call it instinct." She turned slowly to face him. "You strike me as a man with many instincts. A few, but only some are worth following." For a moment they stood face to face. Neither spoke. Outside, the rain poured harder, the sound stretching into the charged silence between their breaths. Livia stepped back, but he gently took her arm. Not forcefully, just enough to be felt. "You don't have to be afraid." "I'm not." "Then why are you shaking?" "Because I know what comes after this." Dante let go slowly, their eyes held, intense, unwavering, as if they stood on the edge of something neither was ready to name. But neither of them stepped forward. "Good night, Livia." "Good night." He walked out without looking back, and she remained there, trying to catch her breath, the one he had taken with him. In the days that followed, their conversations returned to strictly professional matters, but it was too late. The silence between them had changed. There was an unspoken understanding now, something growing in the spaces between their words, a promise they both pretended not to hear. And yet, with every look, every gesture, every small exchange, it whispered, "The story has already begun, and there's no turning back." Because when love is born between pride and fear, it needs no declaration. It grows in the silence, between what's said and what's left unsaid. The following weeks unfolded under the guise of normalcy, a calm so flawless it felt almost fabricated. The office ran as usual, reports delivered, meetings scheduled, goals dissected with mechanical precision. But beneath the surface something stirred quietly, like a fracture creeping through old varnished wood. Livia sensed it in the way Dante avoided looking at her for too long. At first she thought it was relief, after all distance meant fewer risks, but soon she understood it was just another form of presence. His silence followed her home, echoing long after his voice had faded. He, in turn, felt the weight of that restraint. He wasn't an impulsive man, nor one used to being challenged. He had always equated power with control, and control with safety from chaos. But ever since Livia had walked into his life, he'd begun to realize just how seductive chaos could be. That Wednesday, an important meeting took over the main floor. Foreign investors, high-stakes contracts, negotiations that could shape the future of the company. As always, Dante led with the quiet authority of someone who had learned to turn silence into power. Livia, seated a few chairs away, took notes with deliberate focus, trying to ignore the tension crawling beneath her skin. Every time he spoke, his voice felt too close, too low. There was something in his tone that disarmed her, not power but the way he withheld it. During a break she went to the cafe upstairs and found him already there, alone, leaning against the counter, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. For a split second, she considered walking away, but before she could decide, he turned. "Are you avoiding me, Livia?" he asked, not unkindly. She took a breath. "No, just getting coffee." "So, coincidence?" "Yes," she replied curtly. "But if you'd prefer, I can come back later." "I'd prefer you stayed," he said calmly. Silence fell again. The hum of the coffee machine filled the space, blending with the warm scent of roasted beans and his ever-present woodsy cologne. She glanced sideways, his slightly tousled hair, the weariness in his gaze, the informal way he wore his shirt, as if he'd forgotten to wear the armor he usually did. The man and the myth, both standing in front of her. And the problem was, the man felt far more dangerous than the myth. "Do you think this is a good idea?" she asked, without looking at him. "No," he answered with a wry smile. "But what is a good idea, really?" She turned slowly, arms crossed. "In your case, keeping your distance. And in yours? Remembering that you're my boss. What if I wasn't? It'd still be the same problem." "What problem?" "The kind that happens when someone believes they can have whatever they want." Dante stepped closer but didn't touch her. "I don't want everything, Livia." "Then what do you want?" "To understand why, out of everyone who could challenge me, it's you who keeps me awake at night." She looked away. He wasn't the type to throw words around lightly. And something in the way he said it didn't feel like a tactic. It felt like a confession, disguised as a thought. "Maybe you just need to sleep more and think less." "Maybe," he replied, almost to himself. "But some things don't disappear just because you close your eyes." Livia set her coffee down and walked away. She knew if she stayed, she'd say something she couldn't take back, and whatever fragile balance they still had, it lived in the silence. In the days that followed, Dante maintained his usual formal tone, but every now and then, something slipped through. A glance held a second too long, a word spoken just under breath, and it was enough to leave her unsettled for hours afterward. One night after a draining meeting, Livia made her way to the parking lot. Rain fell steady, drumming against the asphalt, gathering in shallow pools that reflected the cool glow of office lights. She sat in her car, motionless, hands on the wheel, trying to catch her breath from a routine that was beginning to drown her. Just as she was about to start the engine, she saw Dante walking across the lot, black umbrella in hand. He was on the phone, his voice steady but worn. When he spotted her, he ended the call. "Working late again?" he asked. "Someone has to keep the machine running." "And who keeps you running?" She gave a dry laugh. "Caffeine, for now." He stepped closer. "You know you don't have to prove anything to me, right? I don't work for you, I work for myself. That's what you say, but it's not what I see." She turned to him, frustrated. "And what do you see?" Someone trying way too hard not to care. And you? What are you trying? Not to fail. And is it working? No, he said after a long pause, not with you. She couldn't speak. The rain seemed to swallow the world around them. Dante moved closer, close enough that she caught the scent of his rain-dampened coat. Tell me I'm wrong, Livia. About what? About what's happening between us. She swallowed hard. There's nothing happening. Then why can't you look me in the eye and say that without hesitating? She met his gaze, long, sharp, almost painful, and then looked away. Good night, Mr. Vasconcelos. She got in the car and drove off without looking back, but her hands trembled on the wheel, and for the first time, she realized just how close the line between them was to breaking. The break came a few days later, and like all breaks, it started with something small. It was Thursday late afternoon. An internal event brought together employees from across departments, soft music, wine glasses, smiles that lasted only as long as the boss was in the room. Olivia tried to seem relaxed, but her attention kept drifting to the far side of the room, where Dante stood talking to the new PR consultant, a polished, elegant woman. They laughed quietly, leaning in just enough to seem far too familiar. And though she didn't want to admit it, something twisted inside her. A strange ache, somewhere between pride and jealousy. By the time he walked over to her, she had already decided to act indifferent. Enjoying yourself? He asked, lifting a glass of wine. I tried, but you hijacked the entertainment for the night. Jealous? Bored? He smiled, but his eyes turned serious. Didn't know you watched me so closely. Don't flatter yourself. I'm not. I'm just observant. Isn't that your specialty? Not everything, he said, stepping a bit closer, but enough to know when someone's lying. And you're an expert in that? I'm someone who lives surrounded by masks. Then you must feel right at home. He stopped. His expression shifted. Are you trying to provoke me? No, just being honest. Then tell me something true, Livia. Like what? Like the fact that I'm not the only one feeling this. She held his gaze. Feeling what? This tension, this anger that isn't really anger, this urge to run and to stay. For a moment the world fell silent. The chatter, the laughter, the music, all faded. Her heart pounded, but she kept her face unreadable. And before she could reply, he leaned in slightly, his voice barely a whisper. I should stay away, but you undo me. Livia stepped back like she needed air. Don't play with something you don't intend to hold. What if I've been holding it since day one? She blinked, startled by his candor, but before she could say anything, the consultant returned. Dante, they're waiting for you for the toast. He nodded, but his gaze lingered on Livia a second longer before walking away. She stood there, feeling the weight of what had just shifted between them. There was no more room for denial. The quiet game had been broken. In the days that followed, a facade of normality settled over everything, a calm so seamless it almost felt false. The office carried on its usual rhythm, reports submitted, meetings on schedule, goals discussed with mechanical precision. Yet beneath it all, something was growing silently, like a crack widening in the varnish of an old table. Livia noticed it in the way Dante Vasconcelos avoided looking at her for too long. At first she thought it was relief. Distance meant less risk. But then she realized it was another kind of presence. His silence followed her home, an echo of a voice long gone. Dante felt it too, the weight of that restraint. He had always believed that power meant control, that control was the antidote to chaos. But since Livia walked into his life, he discovered how tempting chaos could be. That Wednesday, an important meeting filled the main floor. Foreign investors, new contracts, negotiations that could determine the company's future. Dante conducted it all with the precision of someone who learned to turn silence into authority. Livia, seated a few chairs away, absorbed every word, trying to ignore the tension rising in her body. Every time Dante spoke, the tone was too close. It wasn't force. It was the way he withheld force. During the break, she turned up at the cafe and found Dante already there. Alone, sleeves rolled up, without the suit jacket. He looked tired, real. For a second she thought to leave, then he spoke. "Are you avoiding me, Livia?" "No, just getting coffee." "Then it's coincidence." "Yes. But if you like, you can come back later." "I prefer to stay." "Good." She watched him, his hair slightly out of place, his gaze worn, his posture relaxed. The man and the myth. The danger was no longer the myth, it was the man. "Think it's a good idea?" "No, but what is a good idea?" "Keeping your distance. And you. Remember, I'm your boss." "What if I wasn't?" "The problem is the same." "Which is?" "When someone thinks they can have everything they want." Dante moved closer, not touching but near enough. "I don't want everything, Livia." "Then what do you want?" "To understand why, out of all the people who could challenge me, it's you who keeps me awake at night. Maybe you just need to sleep more and think less. Maybe. But some things don't vanish just because you close your eyes." She walked away. The line between them still held, for now. In the following nights, Dante returned later, took on more work, tried to bury the silent ache, but nothing filled the gap. One rainy evening in the empty parking lot, working late again, someone has to keep things moving. And who keeps you moving? Coffee, for now. You know you don't need to prove anything to me, right? I don't work for you, I work for me. That's what you say, but what I see, and what do you see? Someone trying too hard not to care. And you, what do you try? Not to fail. Are you succeeding? No, not with you. Then tell me I'm wrong, Livia. What about? About what's happening between us. There's nothing happening. Then why can't you look at me and say that without that pause? She walked away. Her hands shook on the wheel. The line between them wavered. A few days later at a company event, she saw Dante laughing with someone else, the new consultant. Something inside her cracked. Enjoying yourself? Tried, but you monopolized the night. Jealous? Bored. I didn't know you watched me so closely. Don't flatter yourself. I only know what I see. Mask expert. Someone surrounded by masks. Then you must belong. Trying to provoke me? Honest. Then say a truth, Livia. Which one? That I'm not the only one who feels this. Feels what? This tension, this anger that isn't anger, the urge to run, the urge to keep. He leaned in. I should stay away, but you undo me. Don't mess with what you don't intend to support. What if I have since day one? She blinked. He left. She stood feeling the weight of what was broken. Silence between them became the loudest thing. Weeks later, no room for denial remained. Their routine stayed the same outwardly. Inside, the air changed. She moved earlier, stayed later, used headphones. He buried himself in work. But both carried memories. Then one Monday, a news spread. Livia Nogueira requested a transfer to another branch. Professional reasons, the email said. But he knew. He watched her clear her desk in silence. Wanted to say something, but stubborn pride stopped him. Maybe fear. When she left, the echo of her heels in the corridor sounded like a verdict. The next morning, the office felt larger and emptier at once, and Dante realizes that the emptiness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of her. Because love, when it rises from conflict, doesn't announce itself. It slips in, and once inside, no amount of power, pride, or silence can keep it locked out. The days dragged on. Her absence wasn't just physical, it was sensory. The atmosphere felt changed, less human. Meetings, once alive with ideas, turned mechanical. And Dante, so used to leading with unwavering precision, started slipping on the simplest things: dates, names, times. People noticed, but no one dared say anything. At night, at home, he drank more than he should. The apartment was filled with silences that sounded too much like hers, More than once, he almost called her, but almost became a habit. And the habit turned into cowardice. Time moved on, indifferent. Meanwhile, Livia was trying to adjust to her new routine. The new branch was smaller, quieter, but colder too. Her co-workers were polite, but distant. She threw herself into work, refusing any invitation from the past. But the past had a way of finding her, dressed as memory, a song on the radio, a phrase someone repeated, a scent, wood and rain. Sometimes she dreamed of him, never touching, just presence. As if even her subconscious knew that distance still wasn't enough, and she'd wake with the aching sense of having lost something she never truly had. 3 months passed this way. Time, with its false generosity, pretended to offer healing. But pain, born from what never had closure, doesn't fade. It suspends. And fate, as always, waited for the right moment to interfere. It was a grey afternoon in October when their paths crossed again. A corporate event, a joint initiative between the two branches. Livia knew Dante would be there. She thought about declining, but professionalism won. "It's just an event," she told herself, but deep down, she knew she was lying. The venue was wide, warm-lit, filled with voices and clinking glasses. She entered quietly, dressed with understated elegance. Nothing flashy, but enough for him to notice. And he did. From across the room, Dante saw her, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. No music, no chatter, just her. The way she walked, the way her hair was pinned loosely, the way she avoided his eyes. When they finally came face to face, silence fell. "Livia," he said softly, more like a memory than a greeting. "Mr. Vasconcelos," she replied, formal. "You don't have to call me that. It's the proper way. Maybe what's proper doesn't matter anymore." "It does," she said, her voice steady. "It's all that's left when everything else falls apart." The words hit him like a quiet blow. He looked away for a long beat. "You look well," he finally said. "I've learned to look like it. Are you happy?" "Happiness is a luxury, Mr. Vasconcelos. Some of us are just trying to find peace." Silence again. He looked like he wanted to say more, but guilt swallowed the words, and she knew that anything more might tear open wounds that hadn't really healed. So she walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the room, an empty glass in his hand and a bitter taste of defeat on his tongue. In the days that followed, neither of them could shake the memory of that encounter. Livia tried to ignore it, but the moments kept returning like a low-grade fever. His eyes, the way he paused before speaking, how he'd slip and call her "you" instead of sticking to the formality. It felt like nothing had changed, only the silence had evolved. Dante, on the other hand, realized something inside him had finally cracked. He kept replaying every choice, every silence, every missed chance to simply say, "Stay." But pride, that faithful enemy of those who love too late, still kept him trapped. Until one night, returning from a trip, he received an unexpected email. It was a notice from legal. The branch where Livia worked was being restructured. Layoffs, reassignments, cutbacks, and her name was on the list. For a moment, his heart stopped. It wasn't rational, it was instinct. The impulse to protect her, to stop her from falling again because of something that ultimately came from him. But beneath that was fear. Fear that she'd vanish again. This time for good. The next morning, Dante showed up at the branch unannounced. The entire office buzzed with tension, executives scrambling, phones ringing, doors swinging open. But he didn't care. He walked straight to her department. And when she looked up and saw him standing there, time folded in on itself. Livia stood slowly, stunned. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk." "There's nothing left to say, Mr. Vasconcelos." "There is," he said, voice firm. "You're leaving this place, but not because of some bureaucratic decision. You're leaving because you deserve better." She stared at him cold. "And you think you get to decide what I deserve?" "No," he said, honestly, "but I can apologize for not being there when I should have been." For a moment she was silent. His words hit differently. This wasn't Dante the executive. This was the man. And the man looked shattered. "I didn't come here out of regret," he added. "I came because I'm done pretending none of this matters." The silence between them stretched long. She took a breath, her voice tight. "You have a gift for showing up right when it's already too late." He stepped closer. "Maybe it's not." But she pulled back. "Don't do this, Dante." "Do what?" "Pull me back into something I've spent months trying to bury." He stopped and understood. But there were unshed tears in her eyes, quiet, steady, the kind that hurt more because they never fall. "Just tell me one thing," she said finally. "If I hadn't left, would you have stayed?" He lowered his gaze. "I would have tried, but I don't know if I could have." That answer hurt, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. Livia nodded slowly and turned away. "Then now you understand why I had to go." She didn't wait for a reply. She walked away. Dante stood there, frozen, listening to the echo of her footsteps down the hallway. He knew there was nothing he could say that would mend what had already been broken, but for the first time, he felt something he'd never admitted before. Fear. Fear that he might not get another chance. And that afternoon, in the stillness, he understood something simple and devastating. Love doesn't need an ending to hurt. Sometimes absence is enough. In the weeks that followed, he didn't reach out. But quietly, he began rearranging his world. He revised internal policies, scaled back media appearances, postponed travel. No one knew why, except him. It was as if he were clearing a path for something new, not knowing if she'd ever want to walk it with him again. Livia, meanwhile, began to feel the weight of her own resistance. She no longer hated Dante, but she didn't know how to love him like before either. It was a fragile terrain, somewhere between forgiveness and forgetting. And forgetting, she knew, is a luxury reserved for those who loved lightly. But she had loved deeply, because love, when it's real, doesn't vanish. It changes shape, changes voice, but stays, quietly waiting for pride to surrender and for fate to whisper the right name again. Sayasi Bayrams, it was early November when the silence finally cracked. Not because of chance or a sudden burst of courage, but because every absence, every unspoken sentence had begun to demand an answer. Dante didn't plan to see her. He simply went. It was raining. That thin, persistent kind of rain that never soaks, but seeps in quietly, like the sky, mourning in silence. He parked in front of the old building where he knew she lived. For a long time he sat in the car, watching the lit windows, trying to guess which one was hers. It didn't matter. When he finally stepped out, the street glistened with reflections. The air smelled of wet earth. His hands shook, not from cold, but from fear. Every step to the door felt like a calculated risk of loss. He had no excuse, no clever pretext, only an undeniable need to be there. The doorman recognized him, hesitated, then nodded him in, a near conspiratorial gesture. The elevator creaked shut with painful slowness, like it was giving him one last chance to turn back. In the metal reflection, he saw a man he barely recognized, tired, but ready. When the doors opened, the hallway was still. Warm, yellow light. The distant sound of a TV. His footsteps echoing. He stopped at 304, breathed in, knocked. Once, then again, and waited. The seconds stretched like judgment. Then the latch turned, and there she was. Hair down, book in hand, no makeup, no mask. Just her. "Dante?" He nodded, unable to speak at first. They looked at each other, two exiles recognizing one another. "Can I come in?" he asked. She hesitated, measured him, measured herself, then stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was small, warm, books stacked in corners, a throw blanket on the couch, coffee in the air, rain on the window. Nothing about it belonged to his world, yet everything made sense. "I know I should have called," he said, removing his coat. "But I figured if I had, you wouldn't have answered." "Probably not. And if you hadn't opened the door just now, I guess you'd have waited." "I would have." She gave him a look, part disbelief, part hope, part fear. 3 months is a long time to explain nothing. "I know," he said softly, "but time doesn't erase what's true. It only reveals what wasn't." She sat. He remained standing for a moment, then slowly approached. "I'm not here to justify the past, Livia. I'm here because the silence is killing me." Silence doesn't kill, Dante. Yes, it does, slowly, like running out of air from the inside. She ran a hand through her hair, breathed. "What do you want from me?" "A chance to start from zero." "That doesn't exist." "Maybe not, but the courage to try does." She looked at him, steady. "I'm not the same person. Neither am I. So what's left?" "The truth." The way he said it made her shiver. No performance, no strategy, just vulnerability. And for the first time, she saw not the man in the perfect suit, not the executive with the commanding voice, but someone who had learned through loss the size of his own solitude. "I loved you," she said suddenly, "but you never saw it." He closed his eyes. Her words hit like fire. "I saw it. I just didn't know what to do with it. And now? Now I know I don't want to live in what's left of us. I want what's still possible." She looked away, holding back the flood. "You always show up when I've already rebuilt, and still you open the door." She looked at him, anger, tenderness, longing, and something like hope, all tangled together. "Don't make me promises." "I won't. No promises. No speeches. Just the truth." He stepped closer. "I wasn't the man you deserved back then, but everything I've done since was an attempt to become someone who could look at you without needing to apologize." She blinked slowly, heart tightening. "Did you become him?" "Not yet. But that's why I'm here." The silence that followed was the truest one they'd ever shared. No walls, no masks. Outside, the rain kept falling, as if the world itself had paused to witness a moment that didn't need more words. For a while they just sat there, two tired adults, quietly wondering if what was left was enough to begin again. Dante sat beside her but didn't reach out. Not yet. "What's the hardest part?" she asked, staring straight ahead. "Forgiving something that never had a name." "I know," he said softly, "but maybe forgiveness begins when we realize the other person bled too." She turned to him, studying his face. There was something different in his eyes, less guarded, more human, the kind of change that doesn't come from will, but from pain. "You used to seem untouchable," she said, almost in a whisper. "And now? You look tired." He gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe that's what love does when it shows up too late, or what pride ruins when it shows up too soon." He nodded, and the silence that followed was loaded with meaning. For a second she thought about standing up, ending it before it turned into something harder to escape, but something stronger kept her in place. "Dante, I don't know if we can go back." "Neither do I." "Then why are you here?" "Because I want to find out." There was too much honesty in that sentence, and sometimes honesty is more dangerous than any lie. She took a deep breath, trying to organize what she was feeling. "But nothing that comes from the heart follows a logical order. I was angry at you," she admitted, "angry that you left me alone when I needed you most. But later, I realized it wasn't anger I felt the most. It was absence." "I felt it too," he said quietly. "But what I missed in you wasn't just the woman, it was the mirror." She looked at him, puzzled. "Mirror? You saw me in a way I didn't know existed. And when you left, I lost the only version of myself that still believed I could be redeemed." Livia fell silent, unexpectedly moved. And for the first time, she believed him. She believed him because love, when it's real, has a way of stripping down even the most stubborn pride. They talked into the night, about everything they'd avoided, the fears, the guilt, the choices made out of cowardice. Every pause was a quiet kind of forgiveness. Every look, a quiet promise to try, not to return to what was, but to imagine what could still be. Around midnight, the rain stopped. Livia stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the damp city, the streetlights glowing on wet pavement. Dante stayed seated, watching her in silence. "It's strange," she said. "We spend so long trying to forget someone, and just when we do, they come back. Maybe forgetting isn't the opposite of love. What is then? Fear." She looked at him for a long, searching moment, then stepped closer. "What would you do differently if you had another chance?" "Everything," he replied without hesitation, "but I'd start with what I didn't do. I wouldn't let you go." Her gaze softened. There was a heavy silence, and then she said, "I don't know if I can love you the same way again." He rose slowly and replied, steady and calm, "I don't want the same way. I want what comes after the pain." And this time it was she who moved closer. No rush, no words. The touch was light, just her fingertips brushing his face. A small gesture, but one that carried years of waiting. He closed his eyes, letting himself feel it. There was no desperate passion, no urgency, just recognition. The kind of touch that doesn't make promises, only tells the truth. "Are you still afraid to mess up?" she whispered. "I'm more afraid not to try." And then she kissed him. Not with the rush of desire, but with the gentleness of forgiveness. It was a slow kiss, almost sad, like each movement whispered, "Now I understand." When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his and whispered, "I don't know what comes next." "Neither do I," he replied, "but for the first time, I don't need to." And they stayed there for a while that didn't need to be measured. Two survivors of their own pride, wrapped in a silence that, finally, had stopped hurting. In the weeks that followed, they began to see each other without labels, without definitions. Quick lunches, long conversations, small gestures that spoke louder than promises. It wasn't a new beginning in the usual sense. It was a recognition, an acceptance of what they had been and of what they might still become. Dante was still at the top of the company, but he was no longer the same. He'd shed the impenetrable tone, trading command for listening. Livia had learned not to hide behind efficiency. She spoke more, laughed truly, and little by little began to trust, not him, but herself. There were relapses, silences, days of doubt. But unlike before, now there was conversation. And in love, sometimes what saves you is simply the willingness to stay, even when you don't yet know the answer. Because mature love isn't what bursts into flame, it's what survives the ashes. And when pride finally surrenders, what remains is what was always there, the desire to be seen and understood. Days began to blur together. There were no milestones, no promises, no well-defined plans, just a succession of mornings that seemed to carry a calm they had long believed unreachable. After their reunion, Dante and Livia started seeing each other with a frequency measured only by how natural it felt. It wasn't a secret affair, nor an official reconciliation. It was something simpler and yet deeper, the daily choice to stay, even when the past still left scars. She kept her small apartment, despite his gentle insistence that she move somewhere nicer. That cramped space full of memories was the one place she had earned what money could never buy: autonomy. He understood that, and deep down, he admired her refusal to depend on anything but her own strength. Dante, on his part, still led the company, but no longer with the same drive. That thirst for control that once fueled him now seemed to him a disguised fear. He delegated more, listened with more patience, saw the faces behind the spreadsheets. Some called him softened, others said he was distracted. He preferred to think he had learned the difference between the essential and the urgent. One morning, Livia found him sitting on the pier. No appointment, no meeting time. She just knew she'd find him there. The wind was sharp, waves gently hitting the concrete. He looked toward the horizon, calm, almost absent. "You know, I thought you wouldn't like the sea," she said, coming beside him. "I like its silence," he replied. "The sea reminds me of time. It seems still, but it holds everything it has drowned." She sat next to him, wordless. For a long moment they simply watched the invisible line where sky met water, where nothing is exact, but everything is possible. "Sometimes," she said, "I think we spent too much time trying to protect ourselves from feeling." He nodded. "And when we finally felt, we had no idea what to do with it. And now I just want to stay." She glanced at his profile. He was not the same man as before. There was a quiet softness in him, a kind of serenity that only someone who has stared into their own abyss can carry. "Stay," she repeated. "You say it like it's simple." "It is," he said. "What's been complicated is living far away from you." She smiled, faint and weary. "You've learned to speak beautifully, Dante." "Not that," he answered, returning the smile. "I learned to speak what is true." To Sophie, the weeks that followed unfolded at the pace of silent new beginnings. There was no longer that anxious flutter that marked their early encounters. Their love had become something mature, made of small, steady acts. On Fridays, Livia would bring coffee to his office, always without warning. In return, Dante left flowers at her building's lobby, never a card, because words were now unnecessary. They no longer needed to fill space with conversations. Just being in the same space was enough. Sometimes they ate dinner in silence, sharing the ease that comes when two bodies, after being lost for so long, finally learn each other's rhythm. Other times they argued, but not with the venom from before. Anger now became an invitation to listen, not run. Their love was being rebuilt the way one restores an old house, slowly, acknowledging the cracks, preserving what survived the first storm. Hasuwaramatsinda one quiet evening, while she washed dishes and he set the table, Livia watched him. The way he folded a napkin with care, as if each simple gesture deserved attention. Then she said, "You know what's curious?" "What?" "You've stopped trying to impress me." He raised his eyes, intrigued. "Is that good or bad?" "It's real. I spent my entire life trying to be what everyone expected of me. And when I met you, I thought I had to keep doing that." "But you never wanted what I could offer. You just wanted me whole." She smiled softly and tiredly. "And you thought I'd love you less if I saw the broken parts?" He leaned in and gently stroked her face. "I was afraid that if you saw the cracks, you'd know I wasn't worth staying for." "And what did you discover?" "That love only begins when you decide to stay, even after seeing what's broken." She fell silent, feeling his touch as though the entire time leading up to this moment had been its prelude. Months passed. Life, as always, intervened with the banality of routine, deadlines, commitments, minor setbacks. But none of it seemed to threaten what they had built. Their love had become a kind of quiet peace, not without flaws, but solid. One night, returning from an event, Dante parked in front of her building. It was raining lightly, and he watched the droplets trace lines down the windshield. "You know," he said, "sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if we'd gotten it right the first time." Livia looked at him, thoughtful. "We wouldn't have," she said. "Why?" "Because we didn't yet know what it meant to lose, and only those who lose understand what's left." Dante nodded slowly. "Then in a way, I have to thank the pain." "Yes," she replied calmly. It was the only thing brave enough to teach us what pride wouldn't. A beautiful silence stretched between them, a silence only two people who have learned to listen can share. On a quiet Sunday, he showed up at her place with a grocery bag. "What's this?" she asked, laughing. "Invitation to lunch. Invitation with groceries? I cook. You supervise." She raised one eyebrow. Supervising your cooking is like witnessing a disaster waiting to happen. Trust is everything. And by some miracle, lunch was no disaster. They did it together. She chopped vegetables, he burned half of them. They laughed. And amid the laughter and little kitchen accidents, the apartment filled with a lightness that only comes when pain gives way to tenderness. When they finally sat on the balcony, with simple plates and wine glasses, the afternoon light angled through the window, gilding the air. Livia looked at him and said, "You know, I never thought I'd see you like this." "Like what?" "Human." He laughed without irony. "Me neither." She leaned and rested her head on his shoulder. "It's not perfect. Doesn't have to be. It's just real. And real is enough." They stayed there for a while, saying nothing, just feeling the city's hum, the breeze, the slow rhythm of something that had at last found its own pace. The months that followed were kind. There was no longer any need to prove anything. They had already survived the worst. The rest was learning. Livia went back to personal projects she had once abandoned. She started writing a book, somewhere between memoir and fiction. Dante, quietly, funded a small educational foundation for young women starting their careers, a gesture that, without words, said everything about how much she had changed him. One day, during a lecture, he was asked what had shifted in his view of leadership. He paused for a moment before answering. "I've learned that power without empathy is just fear disguised as strength, and that courage isn't about giving orders, it's about allowing yourself to truly listen." Livia watched from the audience. She didn't need to say a word. The look they exchanged was enough to show that after so many falls, their love had found balance between strength and calm. Time passed, and with it came a kind of maturity their early meetings never had. There were good days and quiet ones, small arguments, quick reconciliations, but nothing threatened the core. What they had no longer relied on intensity, but on constancy. One night, she woke up in the middle of the night and found him awake, reading. The bedside lamp cast a soft glow across the room. She walked over, laid her head on his chest and asked, "What are you reading?" "An old essay on time." "What does it say?" "That time doesn't heal anything. It just teaches us how to live with what hurt." She smiled, half asleep. "Then I guess we've learned well." He wrapped his arms around her, slowly, as if cradling time itself. "Yes, we've learned." And in that quiet night, with the breeze lightly shifting the curtains, everything seemed to fall into place. The past was no longer a ghost, but a reconciled memory. The present, a space of serenity. And the future, a promise that needed no words. It simply existed. Because their love had finally stopped being about urgency, it had become presence. And presence, when born of understanding, is the purest form of eternity. Their routine had become a kind of refuge. There were no grand declarations or elaborate plans, just the shared rhythm of everyday life, which was miracle enough for two people who had spent so long out of sync. But life, in its usual irony, has a way of testing balance just when it feels unshakable. It was on a cold winter morning that the first crack appeared. Livia arrived at the office and noticed something strange. Whispers, averted glances. Dante's name murmured in the halls like a dangerous rumor. At first, she didn't think much of it. She was used to the attention his name attracted. But when she walked into the meeting room and saw the tense faces of the board members, she knew something was off. An anonymous tip had reached the press. Suspicious money transfers, fake contracts, a scheme of favoritism that tied Dante's name and his company to something far beyond a misunderstanding. Nothing proven, nothing concrete, but enough to shake the reputation of a lifetime. Livia felt a chill run through her. Not just from fear of what might come, but from knowing how deeply it would hit him. Dante had always been a man of control, someone whose identity was intertwined with his work. To see his name dragged through the mud wouldn't just be a blow, it would be a kind of undoing. She called him once, then again, but there was no answer. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and went out. When she arrived at the company headquarters, the atmosphere felt like a silent war. TV cameras at the front door, Employees rushing out, journalists trying to catch any sign of panic. Livia crossed the lobby, ignoring the stairs, took the elevator straight to the penthouse. She found Dante facing the window, his back to her, coat draped over the chair, sleeves rolled up, face drawn. He didn't turn when she entered. "I tried calling," she said softly. "What's happening?" He hesitated before answering. When he finally turned, his eyes were tired, but steady. "They're saying I rigged contracts to benefit partner companies. And is it true?" "No," he said dryly, "but the problem is it doesn't matter. Once they say it, the damage is already done." She stepped closer slowly. "Who's behind it?" "I don't know yet, but I recognize the style. Someone from inside." A long silence passed between them. "What can I do?" she asked. He looked at her with a tenderness born of exhaustion. "Nothing," he said calmly. "I don't want you involved in this." "Dante, you're being publicly accused. I can handle it. I've been through worse." "Not this time," she replied firmly, "because now you're not alone." Dante turned away, maybe unable to bear her generosity. "If you stand by me now, you'll carry my burden too." "And you think I care?" He sighed softly. "I care. I've done this once, you know. I left you alone when it all collapsed. I won't do it again." "And if this time is different?" "There is no this time when the whole world is waiting to see you fall." Livia reached up and placed her hands on his face. "Then let the world watch. But don't you ever take me away from your side." He didn't reply. He simply closed his eyes and pressed his forehead to hers, as if finding shelter. In the days that followed, the scandal gained momentum. Newspapers, social media, anonymous chatter, everyone seemed to be feeding off the downfall of a man who had always commanded respect. Emergency meetings were called, lawyers hired, defense strategies formulated. But no matter how hard they tried to contain the damage, his reputation was ablaze. Livia stood by him silently. She helped in every way she could, organizing documents, answering emails, preparing statements. Yet what truly made the difference was her presence. In those moments when Dante seemed on the verge of collapse, she reminded him of what brought him here, the truth. One night, exhausted, he flopped onto the sofa and murmured, "It's funny." "What is?" "I spent years building an image that now serves as fuel for somebody else's hate. People don't hate what they don't know. They hate what they yearn to be." He looked at her, surprised. "You've always been more clear-sighted than I was." "No. I just learned to survive in places where they wanted me silent." Her words hit him hard. She stood and walked to the window and said, "What they're trying to do to you, Dante, is the same they did to me years ago. They try to reduce who we are to a version convenient for them." He rose, came to her, and for the first time in days, he smiled genuinely. "And what do? We stay standing, even if it hurts." The process dragged on for weeks. Testimonies, hearings, distorted headlines. Every day a new layer of lies seemed to suffocate the truth. But a shift began. Small pieces of evidence emerged, revealing inconsistencies in the documents filed against him. A fraud inside a fraud. Someone had manipulated data to frame him. Livia was the one who found the first clue, poring over old spreadsheets. She spent hours cross-checking information until a detail stood out. The same bank account number appeared in different contracts. She pointed it out to Dante, and together they tracked the source. The account belonged to one of the company's longest-serving executives, the same one who weeks earlier had suggested Livia's dismissal under the guise of cost containment. "He needed a scapegoat," Dante said when realizing the depth of the betrayal, "and he assumed your name would be enough to cover his tracks." They brought the evidence to the legal team. The case, once seemingly lost, began to turn around. But the emotional toll left visible scars. Dante slept little, spoke less, and his shoulders bore the weight of what seemed unending. One night, arriving home, he found Livia making coffee. She looked at him, assessing his worn expression. "You can't go on like this." "I'm fine." "You're not. I have to fix this before I rest." And if you don't fix it, will you keep destroying yourself until you become what they want you to be? He sat down, weary. I just want to clear my name. And after? He didn't answer. She approached and said with tenderness and conviction, your name is just one part. What matters is who you are when no one's watching. He lifted his gaze, and in that moment understood she was the only place where there was still truth. 2 weeks later, the scandal came to an end. The evidence was submitted, the culprit exposed. The headlines shifted tone, cleared, businessman, victim of internal sabotage. But the victory, though necessary, did not bring instant relief. Dante walked out of the courthouse with Livia by his side. Camera flashes lit the cold morning air. Reporters shouted questions he couldn't hear. She walked beside him, silently, and in that brief moment he understood what love really is. Silent presence when the whole world is making noise. When they reached the car, he turned to her and said, "You stayed. I said I would, even when I tried to push you away." Especially when you tried. He breathed deeply, trying to steady the wave of emotion. If I had lost you this time, I don't think I'd have made it back. You wouldn't have lost me, she said calmly, but you would have lost yourself. And then he understood. In the days that followed, life slowly began to return to its rhythm. The newspapers moved on, people returned to routine, but something inside them had changed forever. It was no longer just about love. It was about loyalty, about the ability to stay even when the storm seems endless. Livia came to see him with a quiet admiration, not for his strength, but for his vulnerability. And Dante, for his part, began to respect her as someone who had finally understood a truth. One late night he said, "When this all began, I thought I loved you because you made me forget who I was. And now," she asked, "now I love you because you make me remember." She smiled, tired but with the calm glow of someone who knows that at last, love is no longer hostage to pain. "Then promise me one thing." "What?" "That next time the world falls apart, we'll fall together." He nodded slowly and answered with the kind of sincerity only suffering can teach. "I promise." That night, before he fell asleep, he watched her sleeping quietly, her breathing calm, the distant sound of rain outside. The world seemed to settle into a simple harmony. And for the first time, he was not afraid of the future. He knew new falls would come, new challenges, inevitable misunderstandings. But now he had a silent certainty. Their love no longer needed to be proven. Because when love matures, it stops being a refuge and becomes a root. And roots, even when the wind blows fiercely, do not need explanation. They simply endure. Months became years. And the years, contrary to fear, did not steal the radiance, they transformed it. What once was fire now was ember, and the ember, silent, is what keeps the warmth when the night is too long. Livia and Dante had learned to live between the simple and the essential. Neither of them wanted big changes. The little apartment remained the same refuge. The walls, marked by memories, held a story that once felt impossible. She continued as a teacher and consultant, a modest profession, but one that gave her joy. He, though still leading the company, no longer allowed it to consume him. He had learned to delegate, to arrive later, to let chance have its place. Perhaps that was the hallmark of mature love, the willingness to slow one's own world so the other can fit inside it. One crisp autumn morning, while organizing papers for a project she was leading, Livia came across an old letter, a draft of a farewell she had written years ago when Dante had vanished from her life. The words were yellowed, yet they still pulsed with meaning. "If one day you return, don't bring flowers. Bring silence, because it was the noise of your absence that taught me the sound of my own voice." She smiled, not with irony, but in recognition. She was a different woman now, though the echo of that earlier version still moved her. She placed the paper back in the drawer and reflected on how time, however harsh it may seem, is the only fair editor of the soul. When Dante arrived that night, He found her seated at the table, her gaze distant. "Are you okay?" he asked, setting down his keys. "I found an old letter." "From whom?" "From me, to you." He moved closer, curious. "Can I see it?" "No," she replied calmly. Some things must remain in the time they were written. He looked at her for a moment and understood. Love at that stage no longer needed words, it merely needed to be shared. On weekends, they often left the city. They went to places without phone signal, without clocks on the walls. They learned the joy of a light routine, walking without destination, cooking without a recipe, listening to the wind through the trees. It was in those moments of quiet that Dante remembered what he once was before her, and how if he hadn't fallen he might never have learned to stay. One afternoon, while they walked along a country road, she asked, "Do you miss who you were?" He paused before answering. "Sometimes, but not what I had, what I believed I was." "And who are you now?" "A man who made mistakes." "Just that." "And one who learned to be grateful for them." She smiled. "Looks like you finally understood what redemption is." "Redemption isn't being forgiven. Then what is it?" "Learning to forgive yourself without forgetting what you did." The wind blew hard, stirring dust and dried leaves. She watched him in silence, thinking how time had softened him. The harshest lines were now mere shadows of a past that no longer defined him. The next spring, he surprised her with a trip. He only said he wanted to take her to the place where things began without us even knowing. She eyed his tone but agreed. They drove for hours in comfortable silence. Their destination, a quiet seaside town, the same place where years before they had met, by chance at a conference he nearly skipped and she almost didn't attend. When they arrived, the hotel still stood, though renovated. The restaurant, the pier, the same salty air, yet time, as always, had left its marks. "Why here?" she asked as they approached the sea. "Because I realized we've spent so much time running from the beginning that we forgot it can be beautiful too." They made their way to the pier. The same bench, the same horizon, the same sound of waves against wood. She sat and let the wind tangle her hair. He stood, looking out to sea. For a moment, the past overlapped the present. The same man and woman, but carrying the weight and the peace of those who have traveled their own history. "Do you know what I thought?" he said. "What?" "That maybe life is this: we make huge detours only to come back to the place where we really belonged from the start." She looked at him, and there was a deep tenderness in her eyes. Maybe the secret was never about arriving, but staying. And in that instant, time seemed to bow in respect. They spent the rest of the day wandering through the town. They visited the market, ate warm bread, listened to street musicians. No luxury, no pretense, just the simple beauty of being alive and together. That night, they dined in silence. Not the kind weighed down by tension, but a full, peaceful quiet. The kind that only exists between two people who have already said everything that mattered. Dante watched her face under the soft light of the restaurant. Every line, every faint wrinkle, every trace of time told a story he knew by heart. And for the first time he understood, love doesn't grow with time. It is revealed by it, like a photograph slowly developing in the dark. After dinner, they walked along the shore. The waves came and went in rhythm with their breathing. Livia picked up a seashell and held it for a while. "Do you remember that night?" she asked. "Which one?" "The first time we were silent together, without needing to explain anything." "I remember." "It was here." "Yeah," he said. "I think that's why the sound of the ocean always calms me." "Why?" "Because it reminds me of you." She smiled, and in that smile was a quiet kind of gratitude, one that didn't need words. Their days by the sea passed quickly, as good days tend to. On the last morning before returning, Dante woke up before her. He sat still, watching her sleep, the sunlight slipping softly through the shutters. He thought about how long he had searched for the extraordinary, only now realizing the miracle had always lived in the ordinary. He made coffee and sat beside her as she stirred awake. She smiled, still wrapped in dreams. "What is it?" "Nothing." "Then why are you looking at me like that?" "Because I'm still surprised you're here." She took a slow sip of coffee. "Do you still doubt love?" "No," he said, steady. "But I've learned to respect what love requires: time, patience, and silence." They returned to the city with the ease of those who no longer feel the need to rush. In the months that followed, life resumed its rhythm. Appointments, small joys, shared mornings. But something within them had changed. It was as if, after so much resistance, they had finally learned how to belong, not to each other, but to what they had built together. One afternoon, during a conversation with a group of young entrepreneurs, Dante was asked about success. He smiled thoughtfully and said, "Success is misunderstood. People think it's about what you achieve, but it's really about what you no longer need to prove." After the talk, Livia was waiting for him. They walked to the car in silence. He turned to her and said, "I wish you had heard my answer." "I did," she replied, "and I thought it was perfect." "Do you think we did it?" "Did what?" "Made peace with time." She paused, weighing the depth of the question. "I don't think time was ever our enemy. We just took too long to learn how to listen to it. The years that followed were marked by calm, not without hardship, of course. There were days of illness, fatigue, silence, but through it all, their presence was unwavering. When one body weakened, the other carried the weight, like when Dante went through minor surgery and she waited for hours with the same book, just to keep fear at bay. Or when she lost her father, and he spent sleepless nights beside her, saying nothing, just holding her hand. At that point, love didn't need to be spoken. It was expressed in the smallest gestures: a coffee left ready, a short message, a gentle touch before sleep. One evening, sitting on the balcony overlooking the lit-up city, Dante said, "Have you noticed?" "What?" "We don't talk about the past anymore. Maybe because it finally realized it had served its purpose?" He smiled, gazing at the horizon. "And the future?" "The future isn't a place, it's how we choose to wake up tomorrow." The wind stirred gently, and for a moment, everything felt complete. Nothing grand, nothing tragic. Just true. In the same night, just before sleep, she wrapped her arms around him from behind and said, "If one day I go ahead of you, promise me you won't go back to the person you were." He held her hands gently against his chest. "I promise." "But if I'm the one who goes first, do you promise to keep living?" "I promise. Then we're even." And they slept like that. Two people sealing in silence the deepest pact of all, the pact to remain even when life changes shape. Because time, contrary to what they say, does not destroy love, it refines it like wine, and what remains after everything is what always was, the essential. The time passed without making a fuss. There were no grand farewells, no sudden turns. Life simply moved on, like the sea receding gently but still the sea. Livia and Dante grew old together, not in the rush of passion, but in the slowness of days that repeat themselves with affection. Their love, once so fierce, had transformed into something almost unnoticeable, like air you breathe without thinking. It was presence, constancy, a quiet form of eternity. That morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Dante read the paper, glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. Livia chopped fruit, humming an old melody she no longer remembered the origin of. "You still read the paper?" she asked, smiling. "It's the only thing that doesn't send me notifications." "You're old, Dante. Growing old is a privilege. But your humor stays the same." He looked up, feigning indignation. "Are you calling me grumpy?" "I'm stating it." She laughed, and he came over, kissing the top of her head. There was tenderness in the gesture, but also a familiarity built only through time, the kind of intimacy that no longer needs showing, just continuity. That afternoon they chose to walk to the park, where they had spent early years of their reconciliation. The trees were taller, the benches more worn, but the air was the same. Autumn painted the ground in golden and ochre hues, and each falling leaf felt like a gentle reminder of the beauty in the fleeting. They walked slowly, no hurry. Their bodies no longer had the same vigor, but their souls still moved lightly. Dante paused, watching children play in the distance. "You know what always struck me as curious?" he said. "How children forget so fast. They fight, they cry, and the next moment they're laughing again. Maybe that's what we lose with time, the ability to leave behind what hurt." Livia looked at him thoughtfully. "I don't think we forgot. I think we learned to remember differently." "How so?" "When we were young, every pain seemed definitive. Now every pain is just part of our story, so the secret is to accept what's gone. No, it's realizing that even what's gone still plays a part in who we are." He nodded, silently absorbing her words. The cool wind touched their faces, and for a moment the world seemed to gather around them. They paused on a bench beside the lake. The waters lay still, reflecting the pale, late afternoon sky. Livia took from her coat a small seashell, the same one she'd preserved from their years ago beach trip. She placed it on the bench between them. "Still keeping this?" he asked, surprised. "Always." "Why?" "Because it reminds me that love is like the sea. It changes all the time, but never stops being itself." He picked up the shell carefully, as if holding something sacred. "It's funny. When I met you, I thought love was about intensity. Now I see it's about persistence. Persistence and calm. And silence." She smiled. "You've learned well. It wasn't easy. The best things never are." The sun began to set, sky turning copper and violet. They remained there, saying nothing, simply witnessing the light on the water. Time seemed to pause. Dante broke the silence quietly. "You know what I fear most?" "What?" "That one day I'll forget all this." "You won't forget. And if my body betrays me? If memory fails?" She placed her hand over his. "Then I'll tell you again. Every day if I must. Every day. Every day." He turned his head and looked at her. "Promise?" "I promise." And that promise wasn't just a word spoken out of love, but a vow in front of life's inevitability, the kind of promise only one who has truly loved can keep. The years that followed were calm, until time began to collect its price. Dante's strong body started to yield. First came small forgettings, a date, a name, a conversation from moments ago, then longer lapses. At first he hid them with humor, but Livia noticed. She knew that laughter can sometimes be the last refuge of someone who fears the abyss. One morning he looked at her and asked, confused, "What day is this?" "Thursday." "Thursday," he repeated, trying to place himself. "And where are we?" "Home." He fell silent, staring around as if seeking recognition in simple things. She moved to him, took his hand and said, "You don't have to remember everything, Dante. Just what does you good." He smiled, fragile but honest. "Then I think I'll remember you for a long time." As months passed, the illness progressed. Good days mixed with ones of confusion. There were moments of full lucidity, and others where he seemed lost in distorted memories. But through it all, Livia stayed. She read to him, told the stories they'd lived, described trips, laughter, storms, and always ended with the same words. And after all that, we stayed. Even when he no longer recalled every detail, he smiled at hearing that phrase. As if somewhere deeper than memory, the feeling was still whole. One afternoon it rained. Livia sat by the bedside, reading quietly. He slept, face serene. Suddenly he opened his eyes and watched her for a while. "Are you still here?" he asked, voice hoarse. "I've always been." "I know." He reached out, and she held his hand. They stayed like that for long minutes, until he said, "Remember the shell?" "I do. I want you to take it with you when I'm gone." She swallowed hard. I don't want to think about that. Me neither. But I want you to have it, to remind me when the sea was calm. The words hung in the air like a silent prayer. She nodded, unable to respond. The next week, Dante passed away quietly. No pain, no rush. As he had lived his last years, serenely. The apartment became filled with his absence. Every object seemed to keep him in some way. The coat on the chair, the stacks of books, the lingering smell of morning coffee. But the silence, contrary to what one might expect, was not empty. It was full. Full of everything they had lived, everything that remained. Livia carried on living, as she had promised. She tended the garden, welcomed friends, wrote at times. But most of all, she remembered, not with sadness, but with gratitude. One afternoon she went to the park, sat on the same bench where years before they had talked about forgetting. She took the shell from her pocket and placed it on the bench. The sun, low in the sky, reflected on its smooth ivory surface. She held it a moment and whispered, "I told you again, Dante. I told you everything, from the beginning." The wind blew softly, as if the universe answered, and she knew, without a doubt, that he was still there in some fold of time. That night, returning home, she lit a candle and opened the notebook she had been writing in for years. The title on the first page was simple: Time and Silence. And she wrote the final sentence: "It taught me that love is not what begins, it's what remains when everything else must depart." She closed the notebook, let the candle burn down, and looked out the window. The city slept. And for a moment, the world seemed perfectly at peace. Months later, a young journalist knocked at her door. She said she wanted to interview her for an article about real love stories. Livia hesitated, but agreed. During their talk, the young woman asked, "Do you believe love lasts forever?" Livia thought for a long time before replying, "Love lasts as long as it needs to last, to change the person living it. After that, it no longer needs to last." The reporter smiled, not quite understanding. But those who listened understood. Years later, when Livia's own body began to tire, she asked to be taken to the same place where they had first met, the little seaside pier. On the morning of her last birthday, she walked to the water's edge, in her hands the same shell. The wind was cold, but the sun warmed her face. She knelt, looked at the sea and whispered, "I'm back." Then with a simple gesture, she let the shell fall into the water. The current carried the tiny object away until it vanished. Livia smiled. It wasn't a goodbye. It was simply the cycle closing. And this time, she knew, it wasn't chance. It was destiny, disguised as eternity. Irstidatu Santig love isn't what begins. It's what remains when everything else falls away. When time erases promises, when the body bends, when life seems to lose its rhythm, that's where true love shows its most silent form, presence. Livia and Dante didn't live a fairy tale. They lived what few have the courage to live, the crossing. They learned that loving isn't about feeling everything all the time. It's about keeping going even when the feeling is no longer easy. It's choosing every day the same person, even when the mirror shows new lines, even when the gaze is no longer the same as before. Perhaps time took them both, but what remained no one can take, what they were to each other. Because some stories don't end. They just change form. And when love is real, it doesn't die. It simply learns to exist in silence. Now tell me, where are you listening to this story from? Do you believe that love can still last, even after time passes, even after the body tires, life shifts? Write in the comments. Who knows? Your answer might be the beginning of our next story.